Hey, chiropractors, welcome to Modern Chiropractic Mastery with your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, where we discuss the latest in marketing, business, and professional growth with some of the leading experts in the industry. Hey, docs, welcome to another episode. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, and today I have an interview with Dr. Anthony Houssain, and we're going to dive into a few things, but we give you a little bit of an inside look of what he got from the Florida Mastermind from the first weekend down in Delray Beach in January. As this comes out, we're having our second meeting in St. Augustine, Florida, and we've got two more this year, one in Sarasota and one in Key Largo. We will be having a 2023, so keep your eyes out for that. If you're interested in just getting some of the details, email me, kevin@moderndeskjockey.com. But in this episode, we discuss how someone at the high level that he's at still looking to grow and grow exponentially and what he got out of the mastermind. But then we also dive into something he's developed for his practice to really increase the patient adherence. And it's fascinating. You know, here's someone that he tells a story that I really found interesting and how he used that story from the past to build something for his practice that has transformed it. And he's going to actually present about that at our mastermind in St. Augustine. We're doing a little bit of different Saturday morning format than we did in Delray, where basically the Friday mornings as a guest presenter. We got strategic coach actually coming down in a couple weeks for this St. Augustine Friday morning. Then we workshop the information in the afternoon. And then Saturday we're doing each one teach one. So each of the members teaches for 20, 30 minutes on something that has really helped transform their practice. And then we can try to apply it to each of our own practices. And so he's going to discuss this in detail at the St. Augustine weekend. And so we dive into it today. We dive into a little bit of other things about MD marketing and all kinds of other topics. Dr. Houssain has got a great practice, has done a lot of things, and it's cool to see him still push the envelope and try to keep on growing. So here is my interview with Dr. Anthony Houssain. All right. Welcome to the show, Anthony. I really appreciate your time today. Before we dive into certain things such as the mastermind group, the patient adherence, the app you utilize to achieve that, tell us a little about yourself personally and professionally, and we'll go from there.
So I've been in practice for about almost 25 years, and originally from the Midwest, and practiced in Chicago for about 4 years, and realized that Chicago winters weren't for me. Mm-hmm. And so the wife and I moved closer to where her parents were, which is Alabama, which was dramatically different from Chicago. But we located in Huntsville, Alabama, and been here for now 22 years. And I've opened two practices, and very diverse type of practice, very, evidence informed based, but we've had, anesthesiologists work with us. We've had PTs work with us. Right now the current model is we're a clinic gym hybrid, mm-hmm. and in one location, and then just a solo doctor in a second location. And it's been amazing.
Yeah, you've had a great practice over the years. It's been good to get you to know you over the years as well. And you actually just, I want to dive into it a little bit too, because I just announced it actually as we recorded this. You won our little marketing challenge, our marketing campaign challenge, and you got the RRS education subscription for the year, and you had the MD marketing one. So that sounded like that was a huge aspect of your growth, was the MD marketing. Can you touch on how, you don't have to dive into all the nuts and bolts of it, but how that really just exponentially grew your practice?
Yeah. So when I was in Chicago, I ran the rehab portion of a pain clinic, mm-hmm. and we had an anesthesiologist, we had a psychologist, we had a neurologist, and a neurosurgeon. Mm-hmm. And working with them, I got a chance to realize how much they didn't know where I fit in. Mm-hmm. And so I created an environment where I could communicate with them and kind of hone that message so that I could explain to them in a simple way what I was bringing to the practice. And so when I moved to Huntsville, I had that conversation already practiced from my previous environment. And so the next step was, okay, how do we market to doctors? And for me, I had two close friends that were already in the pharmaceutical industry and the device industry when it comes to medicine. And in talking with them over the years, I realized that the best way to market to MDs was not to reinvent the wheel, but to market to them in a way that they were already being marketed to. Mm-hmm. And thus, that's how we designed our marketing program around previous models that were already in existence. They just weren't in existence for chiropractic, so that we had to create them on our own.
Yeah, it's great. And then for our listeners, you can search the Facebook group for I think it was like 7 steps you laid out really nicely. But if you could just put a bow on it, and what was the essential message that you needed to get across to them efficiently?
Well, it's the most important thing I realized is that we needed to not change their behavior. If we were going to try to change their behavior, it wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. So the key was showing them where we fit into their behavior. Mm-hmm. And so the point that we really that gravitated and took hold with them is that explain to them that when somebody failed conservative care, or when somebody failed physical therapy, mm-hmm. it didn't mean that they failed conservative care. Mm-hmm. And putting us as the next step when physical therapy fails, then call us, especially if somebody doesn't want surgery yet. Yeah. And that was an easy plug, because a lot of patients, when they fail physical therapy, don't want surgery. They want, what other options do I have, doctor? Yeah. And that was a hole that wasn't filled yet. And they didn't want to send them to the pain clinic because they knew that was a slippery slope that they may never get back from. And so they're looking for options to fill that niche. And that's where we fit in.
Yeah, I think that's like $1 million idea. When I was reading through that, when I was putting together the post for the poll, I was like, shit, I never thought about that in 17 years. I've always was trying to be their first option. And that's just going to be a hard sell for many, like you might get some outliers. Like we have an MD who loves active release technique. He had it done and all that. He's a primary care doctor. So like we get referrals for ART because that's for him at least, it's got a special little, niche. Right. But for the most part, you like you said, you're not going to change their actions and behaviors. You got to just let them know, like, because there's so many people that don't want surgery. And like you said, just because physical therapy didn't work didn't mean that's the end of conservative care.
Well, and the interesting thing that happened over the years is that over time, as we continue to get people better who failed physical therapy, we started to become the default. Because now, instead of why try physical therapy, mm-hmm. if I could just fast forward them to spine care and expedite the process of my patient getting better. And so by getting their failures better, mm-hmm. we actually jump them in the process.
That's great. Yeah, because they started to realize like, oh, well, because you obviously were communicating with that doctor, like, oh, look, they got better. And they started to realize they weren't getting better necessarily with PT, but they were with what you're doing. And like you just said, kind of bypass that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's what happened. And it takes a little work. I mean, it was a 7-step process. So it wasn't a quick idea, but I think if you go through it, mm-hmm. the benefits are amazing.
Yeah. And it was ideas like that, which was, and honestly, you were one of the, and I've talked to you about this, you were one of the ones that spurred me along to start this mastermind in Florida, because you attended our CSA retreat, which was down here in Florida prior to the pandemic. And we had a great group, but it was a very eclectic group, right? Like we had some students, we had a lot of, new grads. We had a few that were established like you and me and such. And it was a great weekend. But you mentioned like something of where it's all high level chiropractors are all trying to think big. And that was a big kind of seed you planted for me a few years prior, and then decided to jump on doing kind of a high level mastermind here in Florida. So thank you for that. And my question for you is like, why did you join the mastermind?
Well, that meeting that we had was, down in Florida a few years back. It made me realize that I needed the environment that, a lot of the younger doctors, what they were getting was just so much good information.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the more senior doctors were doing a lot of the educating. They're sharing, nuggets and insights. And what I felt going through that is like, man, if we could only just have a group of all these docs who are all teaching the younger docs to learn from each other, because even though we've all kind of evolved in the same direction, we've all had successes in different areas that we could learn from if we had an environment to actually, allow that to happen. And so that's when I talked with you. I was like, man, this would be really cool if we could just get 20 of these guys that have been doing this for 15 to 20 years, but been on their own island for so long, and to get a chance to now talk and cross-pollinate and learn from each other.
Yeah, and that was like when I sat down to put some of the parameters on it. I was like, you know what? I thought, I did a financial hurdle that they had to hit, like a certain amount of revenue, just because I figured, I'm not going to put an age or necessarily time in practice. Although I would say most have been in practice for a handful of years for sure. But I'm going to put let's put a practice growth kind of entry level on it. And I thought it worked out well because we do have a few younger docs, but they're in practices that are really doing well. And I talked to a couple of the seasoned veterans out there. They got a lot of good, fresh ideas from the successful younger docs too. So it was a nice mix of people. And when I put it together, I definitely was pretty excited about the people that were starting to join. And I just remember talking to some people after that weekend, or even during, just some of the conversations were great. What were a couple of things you got out of that first weekend?
Oh man.
I knew you had some good conversations with Jay.
Oh yeah. Jay's, I mean, sometimes you just get a rock star that shows up.
That's Jay Greenstein. Yeah.
So, but so it's just the passion and how much work they're doing, even though they're successful, and not complacent at all, and continuing to drive and innovate and come up with new ideas. For me, that's motivating. And sometimes you don't have a lot of people that you can share the stresses of a big practice with, that are going to get you. And so having a room that gets you and has traveled in your shoes and can talk and communicate and share strategies. I mean, there's not many rooms in the world like that. And so for me, that's the value.
That's why I thought, like, when we were on that boat trip and I think you were at the same table. I wasn't at the table, but I hopped in for a little bit where, I think you and Mark King and Donna Maloney, his wife, partners in practice and in life. And Jay was there and talking to Mark and Donna, like, they got a massive practice. But it's not without struggle, right? It's just different struggle, but it's great to hear people that are doing great big things and have very successful practices from all stages still need people to talk to.
Yes, exactly.
And I think you were in on that conversation a little bit too.
So. Yeah, that was a fun time. They're just, I was seeing what Mark has done, and that's just a whole different level of challenge, and bringing in the multiple doctors, and it's interesting to see the challenges that he has at that stage, because it's something that's not even on my radar yet from my own practice, but it's now that it is something that's possible.
And one of the things that I remember emailing everybody about was coming there with a beginner's mind. And I was so impressed by both Mark and Donna, where, they came and were like really open-minded and absorbed, and didn't come in there like you would expect how long they've been doing this and successful. Like they came in and were very just like beginner mind, which is great. And I think that was a big part of everybody meshing well together.
Yeah, I mean, I love the hot seat, where everybody felt vulnerable, which
Yeah.
was just a, I mean, it's a great, when you're among peers like that.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy to feel vulnerable, and you learn so much more in that situation.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm gonna the Saturday. So give everybody, the audience, a little bit of the framework. Is it's basically a Friday Saturday thing, and Friday in the morning we have a guest presenter. Like we got St. Augustine, Florida, coming up in a couple weeks, and strategic coach is coming down and doing their 4-hour presentation. Then in the afternoon we kind of get in and out of small groups and into the big group, and everybody's helping out through that particular theme. And then Saturday that we did in January was a hot seat, 15 minutes of like, tell us your biggest struggle or your biggest growth opportunity. And then people just kind of peppered them with ideas and thoughts. And we recorded on video for that person to keep, and really just like you said, get vulnerable and get some feedback. And I know Jeff doesn't mind me talking about it because I was on his podcast when we talked about it, but Jeff Williams, who's got a great practice, and we need to get him an associate. Right. And like,
Right.
we're kind of, as a group, we're all working on getting Jeff an associate, and so he was up there and we were kind of working through some of that because he's got a really busy, successful practice, but it's all on him right now as far as clinical. All right, docs, here is a new opportunity for you from Darcy Sullivan of Propel. She is our SEO specialist in helping out many chiropractors with their search engine optimization and making sure Google is finding you and getting you new patients. It's amazing how many new patients chiropractors can get and are getting when they do the SEO right and a few other things. And Darcy is offering a free SEO workshop just for chiropractors, and you can sign up for that at bit.ly/propelmcm. That is bit.ly propelmcm, modern chiropractic marketing, right? And so check out that link, and we're going to have you go over 5 SEO secrets to owning the first page of Google without buying ads. And Darcy's going to give that free workshop, 1 hour, to really help grow your practice and start churning new patients from the ever mighty Google, which is still king in the online marketing. So check that out at bit.ly/propelmcm for the 1 hour free workshop. Hey doc, are you moving office spaces, or you're a startup with your own new space, or you're like me where you need renovations because it's starting to look a little worn after about 10 years like ours is? Crossfield's Chiropractic Office Design is here to elevate you wherever you're at, and they're going to help maximize your space and flow. They're going to really help attract and retain patients, and this is going to have a great ROI on your investment when you increase that patient experience. So check out Chiropractic Office Designs by Crossfields, and we have a special link for modern chiropractic marketing listeners, and that is www.chiropracticofficedesign.com/Kevin-Christie. And with that, you're going to have discounts. We're going to have direct links to a mega bundle of free resources, and you can check them out, and you can get 15 of our most popular floor plans, 5-phase checklist for a startup office, 5-point designer checklist to evaluate your current office image. And there's 30% off on all online products when you go to www.chiropracticofficedesign.com/Kevin-Christie. So, yeah, it was cool to do that. In St. Augustine, we're going to switch it up a little bit. And you've been kind enough to be one of our each one teach ones, which is we cherry picked 5 or 6 members to get up and present for 20 to 30 minutes, mostly 20 minutes with 10-minute Q&A on something that's really impacted their practice from a growth standpoint. And that's where I want to transition a little bit here is you're going to speak a little bit on something that's been, very successful. You've done a great job of getting the new patients in, but as many chiropractors know, it's like, how do we do a good job of keeping them in as they should, like within a reasonable treatment plan? And so your patient adherence has improved. And so I want you to talk a little bit about You don't need to go into your 20-minute presentation right now that you're
Right.
going to do for the mastermind, but just a little bit of like, what you've done to improve your patient adherence.
So I'll take a step back a little bit and how this developed.
Yep.
Back when I was a baseball player in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I had chronic back issues, and I'd been to different providers, and nobody could understand what was going on because I'm a 17-year-old kid, and you're not supposed to have back pain at 17. Yeah. And eventually I got to a chiropractor, and the chiropractor said, I don't know what's going on, but here's what I want you to do. And he gave me a note card. And on the note card, he said, here's what I want you to record on this note card every single time your pain gets worse and surprises you. Mm-hmm. And so I kept this note card with me, and I'd start tracking the pain. And eventually, he figured out, still didn't, I didn't understand the diagnosis at the time, but he figured out why I wasn't healing. Mm-hmm. Which was I'd play Axis and Allies. I don't know if you remember it. It's an old game.
Man, you're dating yourself and me.
Yes. but these games were not hour long; they were days long, right? Yeah. And I'd play them on the floor with friends, and so we just put hours in. But we started to realize that my pain episodes would spike every single time one of these marathon sessions would happen. Yeah. So he modified. He said, hey, I want you guys to do this on the table. I want you to change where you're doing it so that we can change up the position that you're in and whatnot. And that solved it. And all these other guys were, trying to figure out baseball and my pitching motion and all these different things. And this guy figured out that, no, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with me playing marathon games of Axis and Allies. And so fast forward to chiropractic school and then going through McKenzie training and then going through McGill training. And I realized that understanding, context is everything. Pathology means so little without context behind it. And so for me, I use the same model with my patients for years, where I'd give them a notebook, and I say, okay, in the notebook, here's what I want you to do. I want every single time your pain changes character, every single time it changes location, or every single time it surprises you, I want you to document that moment so that you and I can revisit it, talk about it. And so I used that for years. And then, back in 2010, the iPhone, came on. And so I said, okay, instead of a notebook, I'm just going to have you use the note section of the phone. So we were using the phone. I was just using it in a labor intensive way. Yeah, and I had to type in the note section. Yeah. And then a few years back, two friends of mine, being in Rocket City, Huntsville, I'm surrounded by engineers everywhere. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we were having a beer, and I was like, can we create an app that can capture this so that I don't have to have my patients typing in all this stuff constantly, and they could just open this up? And so we started down that route, and that's how we built it. And so basically it's a pain journal that the patient has, where they capture these events, and it captures the mechanics of the event as well as their current psychology, what's happening with them. Are they anxious, anxiety, frustrated? So we're trying to capture that moment in time so that I can better understand it. Mm-hmm. And then I can communicate back with them through the app. Now, their app populates a dashboard of all my patients. And I watch on the dashboard how the patients, how they progress through their course of care. Yeah. Taking a look at the events, taking a look at their psychological state. Ones who are getting worse typically float to the top of the dashboard, so I can address them because their situations is more critical than somebody who's progressing better. Mm-hmm. So it enhanced my ability to communicate with my patients in real time and modify their care plan based on the feedback that I'm getting back from them constantly, versus waiting till next week when I see them, when all 6 events now get smushed into one, and there's so much valuable information that's getting lost because we just, as people, we just don't have the ability to separate those memories. They end up overlapping.
Yeah, and this is great because we kind of framed it as patient adherence, but the more that I keep on diving into this, I keep on trying to explain to my team and other chiropractors through the podcast or other means and my coaching clients is that it's all about, it all comes back to providing the best experience to that patient. And it's from a clinical experience, and it's also from just something where sometimes it's like being friendly, right? This is that clinical experience that they're not getting anywhere else,
Right.
where it's going to improve their clinical experience, it's going to improve their outcomes, and inherently will adherence is a big factor in better outcomes. I think we've been jaded because of the other side of the profession where, and that's why I actually liked the switch from patient retention to adherence, because sometimes words matter. I know sometimes it's like playing verbal gymnastics, but a lot of like the other chiropractors would use retention, right? Like, how do we get them to come in for
Right.
6 years and retain them? Whereas adherence is more of like they're adhering to the care plan you gave them. That's obviously within reason. And when they do, it's not about the bottom line, per se. Yeah, it does help that, which is great, but it's going to improve their outcomes.
Right.
And they're going to, like, think about your story of, like, let's say that chiropractor, and I know you know this, Anthony, I'm talking to the audience, but let's say that chiropractor got you feeling better through his treatment, but never really pinned it down to the axis and what's the word
Ally.
ally,
Ally.
right? Like, never pinned it down to that. Guess what would have happened 3 months down the road?
Yeah.
He would have came right
Yep.
back.
All right.
But since he pinpointed it, most likely was able to resolve it. The treatment helped, I'm sure, but now he removed that stressor, and now you're not going to have that roller coaster of pain and no pain. And so, these types of ways of having better communication with your patients and really diving into what's causing it is going to improve their adherence and outcomes. And I think it's just great what you're doing with that.
Well, I mean, there's, we did some metrics. So I won't go into the metrics of everything that we measured, but we studied 300 patients that were put on the app versus 300 that were not put on the app over an 18-month period. And one of the key insights that we found is that, well, so we have a statistic that we measure with all our doctors, and we call it ones, twos, and threes.
Yep.
And basically, it's a patient that self-discharges within that window of the first 3 visits. And so for us, if they discharge in 3 visits, the traction was not gained with that patient. They didn't have trust in the care plan. They weren't being managed correctly. Something happened that they lost trust and they self-discharged. And so for us, we measure that because we want to understand, what feeds it.
Yeah.
And a book, I think about a year and a half ago, I came across with Joey Coleman's book, Never Lose a Customer.
Yeah, I had him on the podcast. Yep.
Okay. So he talks about that initial buyer's remorse phase, which completely made sense to me, that this 1, 2, and 3 population was exactly, that's what they were going through. Yeah. Buyer's remorse, and what we saw with the app is that when we implemented the app, we saw a 65% reduction in 1, 2s, and 3s with people who were using the app versus those who weren't using the app. So we went down from 30% to 10% just on the people using the app. And what made sense is that we were communicating during that buyer's remorse phase. Yeah. We were touching base. We were managing their pain, especially at an elevated state, because when they're first at the clinic, it's probably at the highest level the pain's going to be. And so having an ability to communicate in a frequent way during a highly anxious time was a key tool for getting them through that initial buyer's remorse phase and gaining traction and gaining adherence to the care plan and improving the outcomes down the road.
Yeah, I mean, and where are they getting that elsewhere in healthcare? Yeah. Right? Like they're not, and
right.
We just had an interesting, we did a text message campaign, and it was very successful. And one of the parameters was we sent it out to anybody that hadn't been in a year and within 4 years. And we got a learning lesson from one of our patients who kind of blasted us, was like, oh, I didn't get better. and I didn't feel like I was, paid attention to enough. And when I stopped coming in, I wasn't even called to see how I was doing. So I looked at the patient, and she came in 4 times. She was like 70 years old. I know my treatment plan wasn't 4 visits, but two things I took away from that was, obviously I didn't do a good enough job of communicating the treatment plan to her. And for some reason she thought she'd be better in 4 visits. So I take responsibility for that. And two, and we do a much better job of it now, is like, we didn't follow up with the patient when she fell off. And that, again, that was 4 years ago. We're much better at it now. But it was a learning lesson of like, if you have touch points like what you're talking about, that patient most likely would have filled the treatment plan, probably gotten better, and probably would have referred us people, come back for things, and definitely wouldn't have texted back really upset with us, right?
Right. No, absolutely. I
And
mean, one part of the app that we actually developed specifically for this is it's a mental state part of the app, because sometimes people will be progressing and getting better,
mhm,
but mentally they're still frustrated.
yep,
And being able to identify those who, they're frustrated, they're getting better, but they thought they'd get better faster.
yeah,
So now that person is a risk of self-discharge, even though they're progressing, and you're not going to see that if you're only measuring their pain
mhm,
scale. You've got to look at their mental state and see where they're at, so that you can address it the next
mhm.
visit, and and find a way to objectify what's going on versus subjective.
Yeah, that's great. And I know uh, Jay Greenstein was our guest presenter in Del Rey, and he talked a lot about processes. And this is a process, right? Like, you got to have a good process in place to where you can get that information out of them, because there's a lot of moving parts to patient care. And when you get busy, like your practice is and stuff like that, like, if you don't have a process in place to catch this, then it's just, you're gonna have a ton of things slipping through the cracks, and it's missed opportunities. So, have you released this out to other providers to use at this point, or is it something you just kind
No,
of kept in house?
yeah, we developed it in house because
Yeah.
it was just, I wanted, something to replace,
Mhm.
a notepad.
Yeah.
But, seeing the results, I've started utilizing it with my other doctors, and then
Yep.
seeing their results, I felt that this is something that probably would be beneficial to a lot of other practices. But
Mhm.
that leap is a far more complicated leap than the leap of, hey, getting one of my other doctors to start using it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I get it.
so we're in the process of doing some beta testing
Yeah.
with some other remote practices and
Mhm.
testing it out. But we haven't released it at all. But
Yeah.
the goal is to figure out that next step. And okay, how do I take something that works in my clinic
Yeah.
and roll it out to another clinic with a different staff, with a different doctor,
Mhm.
and yet replicate
Yeah.
the same results.
Yeah, I'm not sure what came of it, but I know, like, one of the benefits of the mastermind was there was multiple collaboration ideas within the group. And I know you and Jay had a lot of conversations about app collaboration things, or just even picking each other's brain on that. So that was cool for you to get some of those insights, because he's got an app different, definitely different, but could be some kind of collaboration there. Who knows?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and just having a group to a very controlled group
Hmm.
to be able to bounce ideas off of,
Yeah.
to test things. For me,
Hmm.
part of joining the mastermind is just be able to, have a group of docs that I know a lot of different variables have been removed. They're
Yeah.
not young.
Hmm.
Because you want to remove as many as possible, so that I can figure out what's not working if we try to roll
Hmm.
it out with somebody. And because it is, it's just, when you run a full-time practice, trying to test something in a remote location across the
Yeah.
country is not the easiest thing to
Yeah.
do.
It's
And
hard.
still be
It's
a
hard.
practice, right?
It's hard. Yeah. There's no doubt. And that's why, like, when I designed the guest presenters for this year, we had Jay the first time, we got strategic coach this time around, really diving into dangers, opportunities, and strengths, and then the front stage, backstage of a practice, like really diving into the unique process is going to be great. And then Mark King is going to present in the third one a lot about clinical leadership and practice growth. And then I got Delegate Solutions, Emily Morgan, the founder of that company, speaking in Key Largo on everything delegation to get some of these things off your plate. Because that's the other thing is like a lot of us in this group, some of our success ahead lies in doing less.
Right,
And so
exactly.
that's why I kind of designed it that way. And then I'm excited. I'm already getting 2023 kind of organized. I haven't done anything to kind of announce that at all, but I've got 2 speakers locked in. I've got Scheduling Institute is going to be coming to talk about everything front desk and really dive into the nitty gritty with that. And I got Ray Tuck, who is kind of the CEO of a large practice group that he developed. And we're going to dive into how to be the CEO of your company. And
That would be great.
he's already locked in for January of 2023.
Awesome.
And Scheduling Institute, we're locking in on either the second or third particular meeting. And then I've got a few others I'm looking into for the other ones. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to running into you again here in St. Augustine in a couple of weeks. And some of the fun is just hanging out and doing the different activities and having some drinks and talking shop.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
We need a break.
yeah, that's the other part too, is like, that's what I wanted. Like, I wanted to be heavy learning, but also enjoying it. And I think that's somewhere where some of the magic is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, cool. Thanks for your time today, Anthony. I really appreciate you giving us some insights on the Mastermind, what you got out of it, the ins and outs of the MD marketing, and obviously the patient adherence, and just some really good gems that you delivered for us today. So I thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Definitely. If anybody wants to reach out and ask questions for you, how can they do that?
Probably just email me. My email is spine1care@gmail.com.
Perfect.
And that's by far the easiest way to get hold of me.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
That is it for this week's episode. But before you leave, check us out at www.modernchiropracticmarketing.com for all kinds of free resources such as blogs and the podcast episodes. We've got online courses. You can check out the Chiropractic Success Academy there, which is an amazing online coaching system for you at a very affordable monthly rate. There's a free online course on the modernchiropracticmarketing.com website, so check that out. If you're interested in some one-on-one coaching, we can do that as well. We have all kinds of resources for you there, and we would also truly appreciate if you could rate and review this podcast if you're getting valuable information out of it. I can't thank you enough, and we'll see you next week.